I, 30 male, come from a very poor family, but my wife is from a very rich one. She started the marriage with a net worth of $31 million, and I started it with $300,000 in student debt. When we married, she made me get a prenup that separated her inheritance and got rid of my right to an elective share if she died. In other words, I renounced my spousal rights to a third of her separate property if she dies, making her sole beneficiaries her siblings or potential children. My debt and our incomes were also separated. We both got lawyers, hers much more expensive than mine, and notarized the prenup. None of this was a problem for me. As a man, I'm determined to pull myself up by the bootstraps, not rely on my wife's wealth for anything. The only beneficial part of the prenup for me was that our incomes were also now separate, and I earned a somewhat higher income than her, so I was okay with it overall. 5 years later, I still don't have a seventh of her current wealth, but her investments have yet to be doing great this year either. As a sole crypto investor, things have been going very poorly for her. I had warned her not to do this, but she invests in a cryptocurrency called Monero, which is down 47% this year. About 5% of her money was not in her wallet and was in the FTX exchange itself, which she lost after FTX went bankrupt recently. She now has a net worth of around $18 million. I don't invest in crypto, but rather in index funds. They've taken a hit this year as well, but based on historical performance, they should go back up eventually. No such guarantee for cryptocurrencies, and certainly not for Monero. I came home to her crying the other day after she found out that FTX had gone bankrupt. I told her, that's rough, not in a sarcastic way, and I went upstairs to change. When I got back downstairs, she started whining and complaining, talking about how nonchalant I was about her losing her money. I pointed out that she's still extraordinarily rich, despite her poor choices, and that she could stop investing in crypto if she wanted to. Besides, she was the one that wanted to separate everything, so why did she want to make it my problem all of a sudden? Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. I wonder why having separate finances would stop you from being able to comfort her. If my partner said that they dropped $20 down a drain pipe, I'd have more sympathy for him than you showed your wife, who lost a considerable amount of money. I get she has more, but it still sucks, and I don't see why you couldn't sympathize with her. She didn't ask you for money or to solve her problems. She just asked that you give a crap that your wife is having problems. You're holding a grudge over the finances and are happy to see her fail. Happy to see her fail? He warned her, for Pete's sake. It isn't nice, but it's a very understandable response, especially after warning her that it was a bad investment. Oh, honey, I'm sorry you only have 18 million. Yeah, no language on earth can say that without sarcasm. Spouse or not, it's hard to expect someone who grew up poor to feel pity for someone whose net worth dropped to 18 million. Because it's not about finances or investment or even money, really. Crypto is gambling. Imagine your SO has a gambling problem. They started big. You warned them that gambling all the time isn't healthy. Certainly not 100% of their savings. But they start a losing streak during some high-stakes poker, and they refuse to cash out. They know they're going to get a winning streak again. And your SO is furious that you're not more empathetic or supportive of their gambling addiction? Not the idiot. Hey, she wanted to ensure in every way possible that you couldn't touch her precious money. Crypto is the Wild West of investment, and if you go there, expect to be the victim of a train robbery. I'm not rich. Sometimes I wonder why some of the silliest people get money and the rest don't. How do people this foolish even get the money in the first place? For the record, if I had $30 million, even with a prenup, I would still offer to pay for my husband's student debt as a wedding gift. Exactly. The wife insisted that the husband has zero connection to her wealth. Pretty ruthlessly, I might add. Millions of dollars. Love the husband, but oh no, not enough to help with your student loans. She should have listened to him. Instead, she made it clear that finances were completely separate. Her fault. And frankly, he owes her a meaningful, "that sucks," and nothing else. I, nearly adult male, lost my mom when I was 5. My dad met Gemma when I was 6. They were married until I was 11, when my dad died. They had my 2 half-sisters during that time. When my dad died, Gemma wanted to keep me, but I wanted to be with my grandparents on my mom's side. Gemma had never adopted me, though. She had wanted to, and my grandparents took the whole thing to court. Gemma tried to convince me to stay, but it was never what I wanted. She was fine. I got along okay with her, but she was never my mom. Stepmom, and that was it. But I didn't feel strongly about that title for her either. I see my half-sisters about once a month still, but I don't have a very big role in their lives. Their mom has no place in my life anymore. She's engaged to a guy and has 3 kids living with them too. She's tried to get me interested in being part of her family, but that was never something I wanted. My grandparents are older and both have an upcoming surgery, which means I'll be staying with my uncle and aunt for a few weeks. Gemma found out about it though, through someone she knows, and told my grandparents to send me to her house. My grandparents and I had already talked about where I'd rather go and who would take me. My uncle would, so that's what I chose. We had discussed Gemma, and I'd said that there's no way that I want to stay with them. In theory, I could stay on my own too, but they wanted me to have adults around. Plus, my uncle and aunt will help my grandparents when they get out of the hospital. Gemma kept calling and nagging, and one day I answered my grandpa's phone, which I had permission to do when I saw her name, and I told her to stop bugging them. She told me she wanted them to let me stay with her family for a while so I could get to know everyone. I told her I knew what she wanted, but I didn't want to stay with them, and that I had chosen where to go. Gemma got upset. She asked me why I hadn't wanted to stay with them. She said she's always hoped the time would come when I would integrate myself back into her family and be her child again. I told her I had never seen her as my parent and had never considered myself her child. She ended the call by saying my dad would have been so disappointed in me, that he had wanted me to stay with her and my half-sisters, which I know is true because he had written that, and he'd hate to see me decide living with an extended family was more important. I told her it was what I wanted and I had no regrets. She called me cruel then. Am I the idiot for what I said to her? Should I have left it alone? Not the idiot. You lost your father and responded by turning away from her and to your mother's family, which you have every right to do. I can't tell why Gemma is so obsessed with wanting to put you in her family picture, but her insistence is quite weird. You're almost an adult by now. You have the right to decide who to live with and the people you want in your life. She probably took OP in and loved OP as her own child. Losing your child is incredibly painful. Her husband did her a disservice by letting her believe that there was more of a bind than OP had any interest in. As a result, the adoption didn't formally go through, but she may have emotionally adopted him. Unfortunately, that's still her problem, and she should see a therapist to process this and stop harassing OP. Did your dad leave you a huge insurance payout or something? She seems oddly obsessed with you. Instead of backing off as OP got older and moving on with her life, she's escalating the push for this relationship. It stood out and it made me wonder, why is she trying to make him a part of her new family, especially since he's been so adamantly against it this whole time? It's suspicious behavior, unless something else is in play here. I'm curious about her motivation. I'd really like to know this as well. She had plenty of time to adopt him while she was married to his dad, and only regretted not doing so when he died. Typically, the ages 18 to 25 are when trusts are given. Now that OP's almost 18, she seems to be getting more insistent on them being a family, so it definitely caught my attention. Whether money's involved or not, her pushing for a relationship you have no interest in is not okay. I'm 20 and taking the semester off of college, so I'm staying at my parents' house while I decide what to do next. My dad had a conference in Anaheim, and my mom wanted to go, so they asked me to stay so that I could feed the dogs and just be present in the house. They were gone for 1.5 weeks. They got home yesterday, and my dad started accusing me of driving his 1960s Porsche and leaving it at a friend's house. The car is his baby, and he's the second owner. The first was my grandpa. I've driven it once in my life, and it made me so nervous I never wanted to drive it again. I promised him I didn't drive it, but the car was gone. We called the police and they came out and discovered that the cameras by the garage had been broken. With ring footage from the neighbors and the data from our cameras, the car had been stolen about a week ago. My dad is despondent because the longer a car theft goes, the harder it is to find it. I feel so bad. He's so mad at me. My mom is too, because I parked my Xterra right beside the Porsche, and I didn't see it gone for the entire week. I should have noticed, but I just didn't. Obviously, we know the date it was stolen, and I must have pulled in and out and parked next to the empty spot dozens of times, and I just didn't notice. I think my dad wants to kick me out. Am I the idiot? Sorry, man, you are the idiot for being oblivious. How do you not notice a missing car while parking next to it? How do you not notice an apparent break-in? Like what? Were you drinking all week? That's what I thought. The semester off, staying with his parents, and then them asking him to stick around the house, which tells me OP is using their house as a crash pad. Otherwise, why would they ask that? The broken camera is also suspicious. So I'm going to guess gambling or drugs, and someone came to collect. They asked you to watch their place, which would include the car. You parked right next to the vehicle, and then the empty spot, and just didn't notice? If you truly didn't notice it being gone for 1.5 weeks, you have some major issues. It's not possible that you would not have noticed a missing car that your dad loves that much. I'm sure your parents have difficulty believing that too. Sorry, but your dad has every right to be mad. You have a major case of undiagnosed something. It's possible to be this oblivious, to cross something and not register it, and have your brain somehow not connect the dots that the empty spot next to your car means your dad's car isn't there and that it was supposed to be. It's a classic symptom of ADHD, especially in women. We do tend to manifest it in more airhead ways, as opposed to the traditional can't stand still view. ADHD is also somewhat misnamed. It has to do with executive function issues, and that seems like it. And if not that, something like that. It seems like obliviousness and hyperfocus at a moderate to severe level. Get a psychological evaluation done by a professional. I'm a 46-year-old woman. My husband passed away about 18 years ago. Before he left, I promised to remain faithful to him for the rest of my life. To this day, I've never taken off my wedding ring. Even when I shower and exercise, I leave it on. I have his on a necklace that I also never take off. This will all be important later. My younger sister has always disapproved of this choice. She's tried to set me up with men multiple times, and every time I tell her that I'm not interested. My sister's getting married for the second time. She had a little bachelorette party, but it wasn't a normal one. It was me, her, our other sister, and a friend at her house. It was a nice little time. She's been married before, so she doesn't really care about the experiences. She's just very in love with her fiancé, which is fine. She was a little tipsy, so maybe she wasn't all there when she did this, but she blurted out, "Oh my God, you still wear your ring?" And I said, "Yeah, I always will." And she said, "Girl, take it off already and get back out there." I said, "I'm not interested." She argued, saying that I could wear a necklace with his ring on it, so I don't have to wear my wedding ring. I ignored her, and she took my hand, and I honestly thought she was going to kiss it and apologize, but she took my ring off my finger and said, "Much better." I grabbed it back from her, and I knew this wasn't the best thing to do, but I was worked up, and I yelled at her. I said, "Never do that again. You hear me?" And she said it was just a joke. And I yelled again and said, "Never do that again." And she said, "Okay, I won't, geez." And everyone went quiet. I went home and cried. I feel really bad for yelling at her. I just couldn't control my anger. I felt so disrespected. I told her I wouldn't be attending her wedding today. And now my mom and other sister are saying that I'm a horrible sister. Be honest, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She had already crossed the line when she started mocking you for wearing it. Then she doubled down and removed your ring. Nope, not okay. And knowing this isn't the first time you've asked her to stop on this topic, why is she so obsessed with getting you on a date? She claims removing the ring was a joke. Ask her to explain the punchline. Everyone's the idiot here. First, I can't imagine being frozen in that stage of grief for nearly 20 years. You've grieved this hard longer than you were together. It's very Victorian. That's how Queen Victoria mourned. No one removed her ring or veil. Your sister, she crossed the definite line. She can't force you into moving to a new stage. She got drunk and was a major beach tree. It's not unforgivable, but enough to warrant a stern talking to. She sucks. You suck too. You're choosing the memory of your late husband over forgiving your living sister. Her actions warrant a talk, an adult heart-to-heart discussion, not boycotting a wedding. You sound pretty judgmental in your description, but I guess that's because you're still hurt. Her method of mourning is hurting literally no one. She has every right to live as she chooses. So why does she suck because she chooses to, in her mind, honor her lost love in this way? It's hurting herself. It's not about meeting the next one as much as it is about moving on from the previous one. That's not healthy for anyone to do with anything, much less a relationship. OP, I hope you're getting therapy. Of course, you don't ever have to take your ring off, but reacting to this extreme feels like a much more deeply rooted issue. My husband and I have been dating for 5 years and married for 1. He has a daughter, Luna, teen, and I have a daughter, Anya, same age. We've decided not to combine our finances, and each of us will provide for our daughter. Anya's about a month older than Luna. For Anya's birthday, I was planning to buy a car for her. I found a nice secondhand car, but it was $4,000 over my budget. So I asked my husband if he could lend me $4,000, but he said he couldn't afford it right now. So I ended up getting a cheaper car. Luna's birthday came up and my husband bought her a Honda, and it wasn't even secondhand, it was new. I confronted him and told him if he could afford a new Honda, I'm sure he could afford to give me $4,000. He said he couldn't afford this car if he had given me that $4,000. I told him he could have given her a less expensive car, maybe even a secondhand one. He called me an idiot and said we agreed only to be responsible for our own child, but I think it's unfair to treat them so differently. Anya's very upset now, and Luna bragging about her new car only makes things worse. You are the idiot. You buy a car for your daughter. He buys a car for his daughter. Stick to your agreement. He's not treating the girls differently. He's clearly sticking to what was agreed upon. You both wanted to stay separate and support the kids separately. Not his fault you were short on funds, and not his responsibility to make up the difference. Separate finances. And if the situation were reversed, would you have really given him the $4,000? Be honest. You could be accused of treating them differently too, because you were buying your kid a car, and as far as you know, his kid wouldn't have a car at all. You agreed to keep the finances separate, and now you're upset because it didn't work out in your favor. Or are you upset that you didn't plan better to buy a newer car? Everyone's the idiot here. Your husband could have explained why he couldn't lend the money during the initial convo. You agreed to keep things separate, and Luna shouldn't be gloating. Separate finances for the kids should not mean different qualities of life, though let's be serious. Getting any car at mid-teenage, even used, is quite a privilege. But where's the communication? OP and her husband both suck for not being adults and discussing ahead of time.